The galaxy had long forgotten humanity. Earth was but a pale, insignificant speck in a universe dominated by alien empires, some old as time itself, others ambitious in their youth. The galactic stage was a place for the mighty, where power, technology, and age-old traditions defined one's place in the cosmos. But it was here, on the edges of known space, that Earth's soldiers would rewrite the fate of the stars. Commander Jacob King had led humanity's last-ditch defense for over 5 years, since the initial alien invasion. Earth had been unprepared, its armies amateur compared to the galactic powers that descended on it. But no one could have predicted the war would ignite a transformation that would make Earth's soldiers the most feared force in the universe. The invaders had been the Goroth, a towering reptilian race that ruled over a vast swath of space with an iron fist. They saw humans as nothing more than prey, a species to be wiped out for sport and territorial expansion. Earth's resistance was faltering, its weapons obsolete, its defenses crumbling. Yet, despite overwhelming odds, Jacob King, once just a tactical officer in the now-dissolved Earth military, refused to bow. It was on the planet Deros 4, a small mining colony in the Outer Rim, that humanity's fate would shift forever. The Goroth had made a mistake. They underestimated humanity's greatest strength, ingenuity. The Goroth's assault force was massive, their ships streaking across the sky like meteors, their ground forces ready to obliterate the colony. But they didn't count on the fact that the Earth soldiers had learned to fight differently. While the galaxy's other military powers relied on brute strength and overwhelming firepower, humanity had learned to use its weaknesses as advantages. Jacob stood on the bridge of the last remaining ship of the Earth fleet, the Retribution. The battle had already begun, but this wasn't a fight to win, it was a fight to survive, to send a message to the Goroth that humanity would not kneel. "We don't have the firepower to go toe-to-toe with them," Jacob said, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding outside. "But we don't need to. We have something they don't. We have each other. We have the ability to adapt and outthink them. And that's exactly what we'll do." His words rang with the conviction of a man who had seen Earth's last hope rest on the edge of a knife. The Goroth's lead ship, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons, descended toward Deros IV's surface, preparing to lay waste to the colony. Jacob's team of elite soldiers had been waiting for this moment. They had spent years preparing, learning the art of guerrilla warfare, sabotage, and stealth tactics, skills humanity had honed for centuries, but never needed on such a grand scale. "Now!" Jacob shouted, signaling his team. A series of explosions rocked the Goroth ship as Earth's soldiers launched their ambush. Small, specialized units infiltrated the Goroth vessel, planting explosive charges and hacking into their systems. The Goroth were confused, scrambling to respond to an enemy they had thought weak and predictable. Jacob's tactics were working. The human soldiers were relentless, fast, and organized. Each move was deliberate, each action a calculated risk. Earth had nothing but their wits and their will to survive. And it was enough. On the ground, Sergeant Amelia Mace O'Reilly led a unit of Earth's finest through the chaos, her team moving like shadows, striking at key Goroth positions. They had no shields, no energy weapons, but they had something far more dangerous: human creativity. Amelia had devised a trap, an old mining tunnel system under Deros IV's surface, one that the Goroth hadn't bothered to scout. When the Goroth forces entered, they were met with a devastating collapse, trapping hundreds of their soldiers in a cavern. In that moment, the Goroth realized they had gravely underestimated humanity. "We've got them!" Amelia shouted into her comms, her voice full of exhilaration. "The Goroth are scrambling. This is our chance. Push forward." With the Goroth in disarray, humanity fought with a new fire, as though the very survival of their species depended on each strike. And it did. The battle was not over, but the tide had shifted. The Goroth fleet had been caught off guard by the humans' cunning, their underestimation of Earth's soldiers proving to be their biggest mistake. As the smoke of battle began to clear, Jacob stood at the helm of the Retribution, looking out across the war-torn landscape. The Goroth would learn, as the rest of the galaxy would soon discover, the soldiers of Earth were far more than they appeared. And they would stop at nothing to prove their worth. The universe had no idea what was coming. The Gorath were reeling from their defeat on Deros 4, but the battle had been only the beginning. Commander Jacob King and his soldiers had given the galaxy its first real taste of what Earth was capable of, and that taste was enough to set the stage for an even greater conflict. Word of the humans' surprising victory spread through the galaxy like wildfire, reaching the ears of every empire and species. Some were curious, others skeptical, but all recognized the implications. Earth was not the fragile, unimportant world it had once been thought to be. It didn't take long for the Gorath to regroup and rally their forces. Their pride had been wounded, and they were eager to exact revenge. But they weren't the only ones watching. The Zypherians, a technologically advanced but isolationist species, saw potential in the humans. The Zypherians had long avoided outside interference, but Earth's resilience had caught their attention. They weren't willing to ally with humanity just yet, but they weren't blind to the strategic value of having a new, capable player on the galactic chessboard. Meanwhile, the Hrok, a nomadic warrior race, had been observing Earth's soldiers with interest. Known for their brutal methods of warfare and their thirst for combat, the Hrok had always favored strength over intellect. But the humans' ability to outthink their enemies intrigued them. They began offering covert support to humanity, quietly supplying them with advanced weapons and information, all while maintaining their distance. But it wasn't just the alien races that noticed. Humanity itself was beginning to change. Earth's soldiers, once disparate and isolated, began to unite under the banner of the Earth Defense Coalition (EDC). The coalition, initially a survival effort, had now become a symbol of strength, solidarity, and defiance. Jacob King's leadership was instrumental in the transformation, but it was the soldiers themselves who had brought the change. Sergeant Amelia O'Reilly, known for her tactical brilliance on the ground, had risen to prominence. She was no longer just a soldier, she was a symbol of humanity's will to survive. Her expertise in unconventional warfare became legendary. Where other species relied on brute force, Amelia had taught humanity to strike from the shadows, to use their enemies' overconfidence against them. It was this approach that set Earth's soldiers apart from the rest of the galaxy. But not all of Earth's soldiers were content with the status quo. As the EDC grew, so too did internal tensions. Some soldiers began to question the direction of their military, wondering if they were becoming too reliant on their cunning and less on raw power. Would they remain capable of fighting in the traditional ways if the need arose? Jacob King saw these concerns, but he also understood that Earth's greatest strength was its adaptability. The soldiers of Earth had no choice but to evolve, to become something the galaxy had never seen before. They were no longer merely soldiers, they were survivors, tacticians, and masters of innovation. If they were to defeat the Gorath and the other galactic powers that threatened them, they would need to continue to evolve. It was in the midst of these growing tensions that the next phase of humanity's transformation began. The Gorath had regrouped, and they were ready to strike again. But this time, they would not face Earth alone. The Gorath had forged an alliance with the Lyranth, a brutal insectoid species known for their hive mind and devastating swarm tactics. The Lyrantha's warships were a terrifying sight, capable of overwhelming any force with sheer numbers. Together, the Gorath and the Lyranth made an unstoppable force, one that could crush humanity once and for all. But Jacob and his commanders knew that victory was not guaranteed. They needed to outsmart their enemies again, and this time, the stakes were even higher. If they failed, the Gorath and the Lyranth would bring the full force of their combined might to Earth, and nothing could save them. In the quiet moments before the storm, Jacob called his top commanders together for a meeting. Amelia, along with other key officers, gathered around the table. The tension in the room was palpable, but there was a shared understanding among them all. "We've beaten them once," Jacob said, his eyes scanning the faces of those gathered. "But now, we have to do it again. And this time, we'll have to be smarter than ever. The Gorath won't make the same mistake twice." Amelia's voice cut through the silence. "We don't need to be smarter than them. We need to make them think we're weak again. let them underestimate us. Jacob nodded. Exactly. We'll bait them. Draw them into a trap they can't escape. It was a dangerous plan, but it was their only option. Humanity had no choice but to fight with everything they had. The Gorath and the Lyranth thought they were invincible, but they were about to learn that Earth's soldiers were far more than they could ever imagine. As Jacob and his team prepared for the coming battle, they knew one thing for sure: humanity had come a long way since the days of being prey. And now, they were about to show the galaxy exactly what they were capable of. The Gorath and the Lyranth were confident. Too confident. The combined might of these two ruthless empires had brought devastation to countless worlds, and their alliance promised to be unstoppable. They believed Earth was nothing more than an inconvenience, a nuisance to be dealt with quickly. They had no idea how wrong they were. Jacob King and his team had spent weeks preparing for this moment. The battle ahead would require every ounce of cunning and ingenuity Earth's soldiers could muster. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about sending a message to the galaxy: humanity was no longer the weak prey, but a force to be reckoned with. The trap was set. Jacob had chosen a remote system on the edge of known space, one where the Gorath and the Lyranth would never expect an ambush. The system was home to an uninhabited planet with a series of massive, deep craters, perfect for hiding their forces. The plan was simple: lure the enemy into the system, make them think they had cornered the humans, and then strike when they least expected it. The first phase of the plan began with the Retribution, Earth's flagship, broadcasting a distress signal. The message was clear: the last remnants of humanity were cornered, with no hope of escape. It was the bait. The Gorath, eager to crush their prey, took the bait without hesitation. They and the Lyranth fleet followed the signal to the remote planet, their confidence brimming. But the moment they entered the system, the Gorath and Lyranth realized their mistake. The distress signal had been a ruse, and the planet they had so easily written off as a barren rock was actually a carefully orchestrated battleground. Jacob's fleet was hidden in the shadows of the craters, and Earth's soldiers were waiting. They had been trained for this moment, trained to fight smarter, not harder. "We've got them right where we want them," Amelia O'Reilly said, her voice calm but with a fire that only years of combat could instill. She stood alongside Jacob on the bridge of the Retribution, eyes scanning the enemy's movements. Jacob nodded, his focus unwavering. "Remember, this isn't about winning outright. We need to break their morale. Make them realize that we've learned how to fight their war, and win." The first strike came from the shadows, small, agile ships darting in and out of the enemy fleet, delivering pinpoint strikes to key targets. The Gorath and Lyranth, accustomed to fighting with overwhelming force, were thrown into disarray as their ships were disabled one by one. They had never encountered a foe so elusive, so unpredictable. Earth's soldiers were everywhere, striking from multiple angles, making it impossible for the enemy to organize a cohesive defense. The Gorath, used to being the predators, now found themselves on the receiving end of a relentless series of attacks they couldn't track. The Lyranth swarm tactics were useless in this environment, as Earth's ships moved like ghosts in the dark, appearing and disappearing before the alien forces could react. "Target their command ships," Jacob ordered. "If we take out their leadership, they'll scatter." The Earth fleet began their next phase, hitting the heart of the enemy fleet. It wasn't enough to destroy the entire fleet. Earth's soldiers knew they didn't have the resources for that. But taking out key leaders, commanders, and communication hubs would disrupt the enemy's coordination, plunging them into chaos. The Gorath and Lyranth began to panic. For the first time, they were facing a foe that refused to play by the rules, a foe that understood the art of warfare in a way they never had. Earth's soldiers weren't following the conventional tactics of the galaxy's great empires, they were rewriting the book entirely. Amelia's unit, working with precision and deadly efficiency, moved on the ground to take control of enemy supply lines. Using improvised weapons, they sabotaged the Gorath's supply chains and communications, cutting off vital resources. The Lyranth, with their hive mind, were thrown into disarray as their shared consciousness became fractured by the loss of coordination. By the time the Gorath realized what was happening, it was too late. The humans had turned the tide. The battlefield was now a place of confusion and disorder for the once proud invaders. Jacob watched from the bridge as the enemy fleet started to break apart. Ships attempted to flee, only to be picked off by Earth's ambush units. The Gorath and Lyranth had lost their will to fight. They no longer believed in their superiority, they no longer saw themselves as the hunters. For the first time, they were the hunted. "We've done it," Amelia said quietly, her voice tinged with disbelief. Jacob looked out at the wreckage of the once mighty fleets. The Gorath and Lyranth had been dealt a devastating blow, but the war was far from over. This was just one battle, and Earth's soldiers had proven their worth. They had shown the galaxy that humanity could outthink, outfight, and outlast any foe. "Not yet," Jacob replied, his voice steady. "The real fight is still ahead of us." The message had been sent. The galaxy would no longer see Earth as a weak, insignificant world. Humanity was a force that had proven itself capable of surviving the impossible. And now, the rest of the universe would learn what Earth's soldiers were truly capable of. The victory at the remote system was nothing short of extraordinary. Humanity had struck the Gorath and the Lyranth where it hurt, crippling their fleets and shattering their sense of invincibility. But as Jacob King and his soldiers celebrated their hard-fought success, they knew that the true consequences of their victory were just beginning to unfold. The galactic powers were watching, and they were not pleased. News of humanity's triumph spread quickly, but it wasn't met with admiration. It was met with fear, confusion, and hostility. The galaxy's empires, accustomed to dominance and control, began to feel the tremors of a new force rising in the dark. The Gorath and the Lyranth, although severely damaged, were not the only players in the galaxy. The war had caught the attention of the Valkyrie Dominion, a vast empire known for its brutal suppression of weaker species, and the Sci-Fi Collective, a psychic race with the ability to control minds and manipulate matter. Both of these empires had been watching humanity's rise with growing concern. The Valkyrie saw Earth's victory as an affront to their supremacy. They had long viewed the Gorath as their allies, and now they would not tolerate any further challenges to their authority. The Sci-Fi Collective, on the other hand, saw humanity's resilience as a potential threat to their carefully constructed web of control. If humans could defy the Gorath and the Lyranth, what could they do to the Sci-Fi? "Humanity has now proven itself to be a formidable adversary," said Archon Zalith, the ruler of the Valkyrie Dominion. "We cannot allow this to continue." A fleet of Valkyrie warships, sleek and imposing, was dispatched to Earth's system. The Valkyrie were masters of direct, overwhelming combat, brutal warriors who knew no mercy. Their ships were formidable, their technology superior. They were coming to crush Earth's defiance and restore the balance of power. Meanwhile, the Sci-Fi Collective issued an ultimatum. Their emissaries arrived on the outer rim of Earth's territory, using their psychic abilities to broadcast a message directly into the minds of the Earth Defense Coalition leaders. "You have been warned. Cease your resistance, or we will erase your species from existence." The message sent a shiver down Jacob's spine. The Sci-Fi Collective was a terrifying force, an entire race of telepaths capable of bending the will of others, capable of erasing entire fleets with a thought. Their power was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. And yet, Jacob's resolve never wavered. The Earth soldiers had faced insurmountable odds before, and they had triumphed. Jacob stood at the helm of the Retribution, staring out at the cold void of space. His fleet, though battle-worn, was ready. His soldiers were ready. He knew this was the beginning of a much larger war, one that would test humanity's very survival. But he also knew that Earth's soldiers had already proven their greatest strength, the ability to fight, adapt, and survive against overwhelming odds. "We've taken down the Gorath and the Lyranth," Jacob said, his voice steady. "But the real challenge begins now. The Valkyrie and the Sci-Fi won't stop until they see us crushed. We need to be ready for what's coming." Sergeant Amelia O'Reilly stood beside him, her gaze focused on the stars. "We're not just going to survive this time. We're going to fight back. We'll make them regret underestimating us." And fight back they would. The Earth Defense Coalition rallied its forces, preparing for an all-out war against the combined might of the Valkyrie and the Shi'Nar. But humanity's battle for survival would not be an easy one. The Valkyrie warships entered Earth's system first, their massive hulls casting shadows over the planets they approached. Their commanders were confident, expecting an easy victory. They had underestimated Earth's ingenuity before, but this time, they were ready for a different kind of war. Jacob and Amelia stood on the bridge of the Retribution as the Valkyrie ships loomed closer. "We don't have the firepower to take them head-on," Jacob said, his mind already working through the tactical options. "But we don't need to beat them in a direct fight. We need to outsmart them. Find their weaknesses and exploit them." Amelia nodded. "We've done it before. We can do it again." And so, the battle began. The Valkyrie, expecting a quick surrender, were instead met with a guerrilla war unlike any they had fought before. Earth's soldiers used their knowledge of the terrain, their ability to adapt, and their mastery of unconventional warfare to strike where the Valkyrie least expected it. But the real challenge came when the Shi'Nar collective intervened. Their psychic powers allowed them to invade human minds, seeking to bend them to their will. Earth's soldiers, however, had an unexpected advantage. The bond between them, formed through years of hardship, sacrifice, and camaraderie, was stronger than anything the Shi'Nar could manipulate. The human spirit, unyielding and resolute, was not so easily broken. In the depths of the battle, Jacob found himself face to face with a Shi'Nar emissary, a being capable of manipulating thoughts and emotions. The Shi'Nar's voice echoed in his mind, cold and alien. *, you cannot win. Surrender now, and we may spare your people, *. But Jacob's will was ironclad. "You don't understand," he replied, his voice cutting through the psychic fog. "We don't surrender. We never surrender." As the battle raged on, Jacob and his soldiers knew they were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy. And with each victory, each skirmish, they proved to the universe that humanity was no longer prey. Humanity was becoming the predator. The war against the Valkyrie and the Shi'Nar collective had taken its toll on humanity's forces. The combined might of two of the galaxy's most powerful empires was relentless, but Earth's soldiers had proven time and again that they could survive the impossible. However, survival alone was no longer enough. Jacob King and his soldiers knew that to win this war, they had to change the course of the conflict entirely. The Shi'Nar collective, with their psychic abilities, had thrown Earth's fleet into chaos, causing turmoil on the battlefield and inside the minds of Earth's soldiers. But the resilience of humanity was unlike any other. The mental bonds between the soldiers had become their shield, a shared strength that protected them from the Shi'Nar's psychic manipulation. Still, the Shi'Nar were relentless. They pushed harder, sending waves of their most powerful telepaths to infiltrate human minds and crush their spirits. Jacob stood at the command center of the Retribution, studying the holographic maps of the battlefront. Amelia O'Reilly was by his side, scanning data and updating tactical plans. "They're wearing us down," she said, her voice calm but filled with the weight of the situation. "The Shi'Nar's attacks are only getting stronger. If we don't find a way to break them, they'll tear us apart from the inside." Jacob's gaze hardened. He had never been one to back down, and this was no different. He had learned to rely on his intuition, his instincts, and the unique strength of humanity. And now, he realized something crucial: the Shi'Nar might be able to control minds, but they could not control humanity's greatest weapon, creativity. "We need to turn their power against them," Jacob said, his voice firm with resolve. "We'll fight them on our terms, not theirs." Amelia raised an eyebrow. "How do you propose we do that?" Jacob's eyes glinted with determination. "We find a way to disrupt their psychic network. They depend on their telepathic connection to coordinate and maintain control. If we break that link, they'll lose their hold over us." It was a risky move, but Jacob knew there was no other choice. They couldn't defeat the Shi'Nar with brute force alone. They had to outthink them, to play the game on their own turf, and then take the victory. The solution came when Dr. Evelyn Tran, one of Earth's most brilliant minds, suggested a radical new approach, an experimental device capable of emitting a psychic interference wave strong enough to disrupt the Synar's telepathic network. It was untested, dangerous, and potentially lethal. But it was their only hope. As the Retribution set course for the Synar's main fleet, Jacob and his officers made final preparations. The interference device, codenamed the Eclipse, was activated, and the countdown began. "We only have one shot at this," Dr. Tran warned. "If the Synar realize what we're doing, they'll try to stop us before the device is deployed. We have to be quick." The tension on the ship was palpable. Every officer, every soldier, every technician on board knew that this mission could make or break the war. Earth's soldiers were pushing the limits of their ingenuity, but they couldn't afford to fail. As they neared the Synar fleet, Jacob received word from the frontline commanders. The Valkyrie were closing in, their ships circling Earth's forces like predators. The battle was reaching its climax, but the Synar threat loomed even larger. "We're in position," Amelia said, her eyes scanning the enemy fleet. "Once we deploy the Eclipse, there's no turning back." Jacob nodded. "Do it." The device was launched. The moment the interference wave rippled through the ether, a massive shockwave of psychic energy reverberated through the Synar fleet. The telepathic connection that had bound the collective together was shattered. The Synar, usually so composed and in perfect harmony, were suddenly thrown into disarray. Their minds, once perfectly synchronized, were now chaos. The ground troops, previously frozen in place or paralyzed by psychic control, suddenly regained their autonomy. The Synar were scrambling to re-establish their telepathic connection, but it was too late. The humans had broken their mental chains. Jacob watched as the battlefield shifted in real time. The Valkyrie, who had been circling like sharks, hesitated, unsure of what was happening. The Synar fleet was fragmented, and their forces were losing control. The humans had done it. They had turned the tide. But Jacob knew this was only a temporary victory. The Synar and Valkyrie would regroup. They would adapt. But Earth's soldiers had already proven that they could keep pace with the galaxy's greatest threats, and that they were not to be underestimated. Amelia looked at Jacob, a fierce grin forming on her face. "We've got them on the ropes. Now we finish this." Jacob's gaze was unwavering. "Not yet. Now we make them regret ever thinking they could crush us." As the battle raged on, Earth's forces surged forward. The Valkyrie fleet, still in a state of confusion, faltered under the relentless assault. Earth's soldiers, emboldened by the success of the interference device, fought with renewed vigor. The tide had truly turned. The Synar, now scrambling to reorganize their fleet, found themselves unable to regain control over their soldiers. Their once unassailable dominance had been shattered by humanity's ingenuity. And Jacob King, alongside his soldiers, stood ready to finish what they had started. But as the war continued, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was watching, waiting. Earth had proven itself as a force to be reckoned with, but this victory was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. In the depths of the void, new enemies were surely waiting. But humanity's soldiers had shown the galaxy one irrefutable truth. They were no longer prey. They were the hunters. And they would never stop fighting. The victory against the Valkyrie and Synar had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in millennia, Earth's soldiers had shown the universe that they could defy the odds, outthink the galaxy's most powerful empires, and emerge victorious. But the battles of the past were nothing compared to what lay ahead. In the aftermath of the Great Clash, Earth had become a beacon of resistance, a symbol of defiance in a universe that had long believed humanity was too small, too insignificant to challenge the galactic giants. And yet, despite their victories, Jacob King and his soldiers knew the fight was far from over. The Valkyrie and Synar were only the beginning. Other empires were watching, other enemies were plotting. The most dangerous of them all, however, was the mysterious race known only as the Zhur-Tai. Little was known about them, but their reputation preceded them, an ancient race, shrouded in secrecy, with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The Zhur-Tai had been watching Earth's rise, and they had decided that humanity's ascent could not be allowed to continue. They had set their sights on Earth, and they were preparing to end the war once and for all. "We've won battles, but we haven't won the war," Jacob said, standing before a holographic map of the galaxy. His voice was calm, but the weight of the situation pressed heavily on him. "The Zhur-Tai are coming, and they're unlike anything we've faced. They won't underestimate us the way the Valkyrie and Sinar did. This time, they'll come prepared." Amelia O'Reilly stood beside him, her expression steely. "We've faced impossible odds before. We'll do it again. But we need to be ready for their full force. This isn't just a fight for survival anymore. It's a fight for everything we've built." The Zhur-Tai's fleet appeared without warning. Unlike the previous enemies Earth had fought, the Zhur-Tai did not announce their arrival with grand displays of power or overconfidence. They simply emerged from the shadows, their fleet enormous and their weapons unlike anything humanity had seen before. Their ships were sleek, cloaked in dark energy fields that made them nearly invisible to Earth scanners. Their technology seemed to defy the very laws of physics, making them an unpredictable, terrifying force. The first attack came without warning. The Zhur-Tai's ships struck without mercy, unleashing devastating energy beams that tore through the fabric of space itself. Earth's fleet, still recovering from the previous battles, was caught off guard. For the first time in the war, humanity's soldiers were on the defensive. "We can't win this with conventional tactics," Jacob said, watching the destruction unfold. "Their ships are too powerful, too advanced. We need to think outside the box. We need a way to disrupt their technology." Dr. Evelyn Tran, the scientist responsible for the creation of the interference device, quickly joined Jacob's side. "I have an idea," she said, her voice urgent. "The Zhur-Tai ships rely on quantum energy fields for their cloaking and offensive capabilities. If we can disrupt their quantum stability, we can neutralize their advantage." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "How do we do that?" Tran explained the plan. They had developed a new kind of weapon, a quantum disruptor capable of destabilizing the Zhur-Tai's cloaking technology and rendering their ships visible. The problem was, the disruptor was still experimental, untested, and dangerous. The slightest miscalculation could cause a catastrophic chain reaction. But Jacob had no choice. He knew that humanity had always been forced to rely on ingenuity and courage when the odds were stacked against them. This would be their last chance to turn the tide before the Zhur-Tai overwhelmed them completely. "We don't have the luxury of waiting for perfection," Jacob said. "We deploy the disruptor. If it works, we fight back. If it doesn't, we fight anyway." The battle began in earnest. The Zhur-Tai advanced with relentless precision, their ships appearing and disappearing as they struck Earth's fleet with devastating force. But as their ships came within range, humanity's fleet deployed the quantum disruptor. A pulse of energy radiated outward, crackling through space like a bolt of lightning. The Zhur-Tai ships flickered, their cloaks unraveling, revealing their true forms. The disruptor had worked. The Zhur-Tai were no longer invisible. But the disruption was not without cost. The quantum energy fields surrounding the Zhur-Tai fleet were unstable, and their weapons backfired, sending shockwaves of destructive force through their ranks. The battle was now one of chaos. The Zhur-Tai were thrown into disarray, their perfect coordination shattered. "We've got them," Amelia shouted, watching as Earth's ships surged forward. "We've finally got them." But Jacob knew better than to get complacent. The Zhur-Tai were a formidable enemy, and their retaliation would come quickly. Earth's soldiers fought back with everything they had, launching their attacks with surgical precision. The Zhur-Tai fleet was larger and more powerful, but humanity had something the Zhur-Tai didn't, an unbreakable will. As the battle raged on, Jacob found himself face to face with the Zhur-Tai's command vessel, a colossal ship floating at the center of the enemy fleet. It was their final stronghold. If Earth's forces could destroy it, the war would be over. If they failed, humanity would be extinguished. "We finish this now," Jacob muttered, his gaze fixed on the enemy flagship. Amelia, prepare the final assault. Amelia's voice was cold with determination. It's time to make history. With one final push, Earth's fleet launched everything they had at the Zhurtai command ship. The battle was brutal, with both sides suffering heavy losses. But the tide of battle had shifted irrevocably. The Zhurtai's command vessel began to break apart, its energy core destabilizing from the relentless barrage. The Zhurtai had been defeated. As the last of their fleet was scattered to the winds, Jacob allowed himself a moment of relief. Earth had done the impossible. Humanity had proven that, no matter the odds, they could rise above, fight back, and win. But Jacob knew the truth. This victory wasn't just about survival. It was about something greater. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy. And the universe would never forget the name of Earth's soldiers. In the aftermath of the final battle, the galaxy lay in silence. The Zhurtai fleet, once the epitome of invincibility, had been shattered. Earth's soldiers, battered but unbroken, had triumphed once more. The galaxy would remember the day the impossible became reality, the day humanity proved that no force, no empire, no technology could suppress their spirit. Jacob King stood on the observation deck of the Retribution, looking out at the debris of the Zhurtai fleet drifting in the vacuum of space. The war was over, but the work was far from done. The victory was a turning point, but it was also a reminder that there would always be new challenges, new threats, and new enemies on the horizon. Humanity had earned its place as a galactic power, but this peace would be hard-won. Amelia O'Reilly stepped up beside him, her eyes scanning the stars. "We did it," she said quietly. "We actually did it." Jacob nodded, but his expression remained serious. "Yes, but it's only the beginning. There will always be those who want to take what we've earned. We need to ensure this victory doesn't fade into the past." He was right. The victory had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Empires that had once overlooked Earth now had no choice but to recognize its power. The Valkyrie, the Shi'ar, and the Zhurtai, all had learned that humanity was not to be underestimated. But there were others, lurking in the shadows, watching with suspicion, or worse, planning their own moves against the rising human force. "We can't stop now," Jacob continued. "We've become the spearhead of something bigger. A new age is starting. We have to ensure we build something that lasts. We have to unite the galaxy, bring the systems together, not just for defense, but for progress." Amelia smiled, though the weight of the task ahead hung in the air. A galaxy united under humanity's banner. It sounds ambitious. "It's more than ambition," Jacob said, his voice full of resolve. "It's necessity." The following weeks saw Earth's influence grow, not through sheer force, but through alliances. Earth's leaders, military and civilian alike, worked to establish a new order, a galactic coalition built on cooperation rather than domination. The war had shown the galaxy that humanity could be trusted, not just to survive, but to lead. The Retribution's crew became the nucleus of this new movement, forging relationships with races that had once viewed humanity with disdain. In the wake of Earth's victories, old enemies began to soften their stance. The Valkyrie, once the deadliest threat to human survival, now sought peaceful negotiations. The Shi'ar, humbled by their psychic defeat, offered reparations for their past attacks. Even the Zhurtai, who had initially come to destroy Earth, sought to broker a ceasefire, understanding that their power was not as unshakable as they had once believed. Jacob's voice resonated as he addressed the first joint council of galactic leaders, standing in front of an assembly of representatives from dozens of species. "We stand at the dawn of a new era. An era in which no one is too small, no one is too weak to stand tall. Humanity has learned that we can fight, yes. But more than that, we've learned how to inspire others, to unite against those who would seek to divide us. Together, we will build a future, not based on fear, but on the strength of our unity." The council chamber erupted into applause, but Jacob's thoughts remained on the task ahead. The galaxy was changing, and Earth had become a symbol of that change. there would be no going back to the old ways of war and conquest. The future was uncertain, but humanity was ready for it. And while Earth's soldiers had been forged in the fires of war, they now had a new mission, to ensure that their victory was not a fleeting moment, but the beginning of a lasting peace. Jacob stepped away from the council, his heart filled with the knowledge that humanity's place in the galaxy was secure. The victory was theirs, but the journey was just beginning. With each passing day, Earth's soldiers became more than just warriors. They became diplomats, peacemakers, and the voice of a new era in the galaxy. As Jacob looked out once more at the stars, he knew that no matter what came next, humanity's soldiers would face it with the same determination and strength that had carried them through the hardest battles of their lives. They had become the deadliest force in the universe, not just because of their skill or their strength, but because they refused to back down, no matter the odds. And that was a force no one could defeat. The universe was theirs now. And humanity would not be forgotten.